On this episode, we finally get to James Cameron's masterpiece, Aliens. Coming up
Dun, 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 dun!
next.
A Brandy Wine production.
So, good to see you again
Good to be
tonight.
seen, bro.
See you don't have your beer open again. I mean,
I'm making it into a
it's
bit,
like
right?
a mania up there.
It's wacky, right? Come on, it's wacky, man. Hey, he comes out. Oh, I got no pants on. Hey.
All right, so we'll try to do our little new tradition of watching a couple of trailers at the end and give you our picks of the week. But this episode is going to be about, and this
Aliens.
is right off the cuff. We have not prepared for this.
Not at all. 1 second.
Oh no, one bit. And it is for Aliens.
Aliens.
Which is, I would say, the most influential film from the 80s.
Yes.
Long term.
And
Because Rambo, yeah, you know, Chariots of
Right.
Fire, Rocky movies. But in terms of the film that is still referred to all the time, even if you don't know they're referring to it, let's put it this way. You know what Halo is? Aliens.
it's Aliens. Have you ever heard someone go, game over, man? Yeah.
It's Aliens.
It's Aliens, dude.
Whenever you see a character say, mostly,
Aliens.
it's Aliens.
Aliens is one of those movies that's so good that not only will you watch it every time it's on. I mean, that's a given. You're going to watch Aliens. You know every line. And it features Sigourney Weaver at a moment in her life where
She wasn't horrible.
she was Sigourney Weaver, the most amazing actress in the world, right now as one of the best written characters ever in a sci-fi movie. So identifiable that people use the term, oh, she's our Ripley. It's,
Right, oh yeah.
yeah, she's amazing
She
in this
was
movie.
on the cover of Time magazine when that meant something.
Yeah, right? Back when we were all on the same team. Back when there was 8 of us. Anyway, but Aliens, and Aliens also, I mean, let's just get the obvious out of the way. For a sequel, this is a sequel to a movie. What percentage of people who saw Aliens were aware of Alien?
A lot.
But I mean, had actually seen it. Because think about kids, right?
Aliens
Alien
was a
came-
much bigger hit.
It was a bigger hit because Alien itself was not a giant hit. And it got onto cable.
It was a hard R, that's why.
But you see what
But
I'm
it was
saying?
still a hit.
So, but what I'm saying is more people seeing Aliens may not have seen
Now,
Alien.
what was Aliens rated? PG-13?
I believe so, yeah. It was not R-rated.
I don't think it was an R-rated movie.
Oh, so it had a much wider audience. That's not, don't misunderstand me. It's not a qualitative thing. What I'm saying is because it was PG, you did have an audience that may or may not have seen Alien going in. And did you have to?
No.
No, you really didn't, did you? And it managed to do something you rarely can do and make a sequel that is not only as good as the film, the source material, but takes it in a totally different direction, and it's awesome. Like it's its own movie that completely stands apart from the first one because you don't have to have seen it to really get into Aliens, dude, with a great cast and at the time, some of the best practical effects you're going to see in a sci-fi movie.
Oh, the rear projection that they use in the film.
It's amazing.
The Skotek brothers miniatures that you see in Terminator 2.
You buy it.
The two guys from Detroit, essentially, that made it in Hollywood because they could do the best miniatures in the world, and they knew how to blow them up with air cannons and stuff like that.
It's amazing.
But let's take it back a bit to what you're saying about it. And it is a fascinating film because Ridley Scott is the reason, along with H.R. Giger, why?
How do you pronounce that? I always say Giger.
I think it is.
Is it Geiger?
I
Like
think
Geiger
it is
counter?
actually Giger, yeah.
If I fucked it up, sorry. I don't care.
Neither one of those cats had anything to do with Aliens. Ron Cobb, another huge influence.
Production designer. Conan the Barbarian.
Had nothing to do with
No.
Aliens. The guy who wrote Alien, Dan O'Bannon.
Not anything to do with it.
Nothing to do.
Other than original characters based on.
Right. But he had nothing to do with Aliens. So that, and yet it is one of these sequels, one of the very few sequels that people will say, this is equal to or better than the original film. And they say that about Godfather 2.
Yeah.
And they say it about Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. And they say it here.
And then I run out of movies after Aliens.
Because of two tough words, man. James Cameron.
Because James Cameron. What was interesting is that they signed Jim Cameron to do this film long before he did it. And they let him wait on it to do Terminator. So they had some foresight, which blew up. And then they're like, oh my God, we're geniuses. And then,
but that could not, that might not have worked, but.
And what was crazy though, so they shot the thing in England, because it's where
because that's what you do.
That's what you do.
So they say. Pilot?
And nobody on the crew had seen Terminator. And he would set up showings at like noon for people to go, hey, maybe you should have some faith in me. I directed this movie called Terminator. Why don't you come see it?
This movie sucks. Whoever will watch Terminator.
Right. Wow, and none of them saw it. So he had to fire his DP. He was at war with his crew all the time. A little bit like George Lucas was. A little bit like George Lucas was in 77, 76 when he made.
But not quite.
But not as bad, no. Because George Lucas was so.
George Lucas-y.
Yeah, whereas Cameron was very Cameron-y. And when you watch the makings of this film, everyone says like, hey, look. I mean, one of the things about Jim Cameron is that he's could do every job on the set as good or better than every person who was a working professional in that job. And that's saying something because they're top of the line. They're Olympic athletes.
Because he started out as a technician.
Well, he started off working for Roger Corman, and he said he got his education by... He couldn't go to USC. He couldn't go to these other...
He wasn't elitist.
No, he wasn't. So he, even though he's from that same generation as Lucas and Spielberg and...
They didn't have that kind of money.
And Milius, he just couldn't go. But so he did go to USC's library, where he photocopied how to make rear screen projections and all this.
Job.
And then he got a job working for Roger Corman, God bless his heart. Yeah. And he set up shop there, and he did the special effects for Escape from New York, that little known film.
That little gem nap,
Battle Beyond the Stars.
Little knock around.
Planet Terror, I think.
See that James Cameron? That's pretty good though. Is that Aaron Morin?
Mm-hmm.
Not to be confused with the Richard. What's his name from the Waltons? Not Richard Benjamin. That's fucking...
No, but he's in.
What the hell is his name?
He's in Battle Beyond the Stars.
Battle Beyond the Stars. Right, that's it.
Richard Thomas.
Thank you, Richard Thomas. Very good. Yep.
So he really had only done. He did one low budget. $2 million Terminator, $1 million Terminator. I mean, it was an independent
They mostly
film.
paid Schwarzenegger.
But it was an independent movie that blew up, based a lot on Arnold, but on some of, and it wasn't just the Skotex doing it. It was so Gene Warren Jr. did the effects from Fantasy 2 for Terminator.
The Terminator.
And Stan Winston did the effects for Terminator.
But wait a second, Stan Winston also provided effects for the original Terminator. Remember the animation?
No, that's what I'm saying, for Terminator.
Oh, I see what you're saying. For Terminator and then into Aliens.
But yet, neither one of them are connected to Aliens. And that hurt Cameron because nobody there knew him. Nobody gave a damn about what he had done.
Who? I'm James Cameron. Yeah, right. Who cares?
And yet, when that film finally hit, and they were hounding him all the time, what are you doing? You're going over budget. You fired your DP. Blah blah blah. But the producers were like, "Are you looking at the dailies this guy's producing? Are you looking at the things that just on screen?
How are you not seeing this movie?
How are you not seeing?" And of course, they did end up seeing.
Right. Did he? Correct me if I'm wrong. But the beginning sequence where they
Michael
salvage,
Remark, that's his fucking name.
nice,
Something like that.
but the beginning sequence where they salvage Ripley's
Remark?
ship. That scene was paid for by
Jim
Cameron.
Cameron, that's
He
right.
actually was like, "I want to do this scene." They're like, "No, you don't have any
Right,
money." He ponied up the cash to do
the
it.
very first scene where the salvage ship comes in there and scans
With that
it with
laser,
that laser
thing,
gun.
dude, that's so slick.
Jim Cameron
It's
paid
so
for that
cool.
out
When
of
that
his own
happens,
pocket
man, yeah.
because he wanted
He wanted
it
that
and they wouldn't
scene.
pay for it.
Can you believe it? And I'm like, wow, without that scene, that movie's incredible, dude.
What's weird when you watch that film is, for as amazing as it is still very much a handmade film. The Skotek brothers, it's all models.
It's all-
when,
yeah,
When
it's a
they're
very
running away
few-
from the explosions,
It's a screen.
It's a rear projected
There's
screen.
no computer effects.
There's no computer effects. in
I
that
mean,
film.
none. Even with the aliens are in suits.
Other than you see the computer graphics.
But that's not. Yeah, but I'm saying there's no CGI.
There's
at
no
all.
CGI in that
and it's
film.
just with the pulse trackers.
Yeah. That is
Call of Duty.
that
yeah.
is CGI'd in later, but it's not CGI.
But right,
it's just
you
animated.
expect that to be a computer. Is what I'm saying. Oh,
Yeah, but even that's not CGI.
and you know what's? Just watching that movie, man, and how just mega effective the dialogue is when they're in that with Sigourney Weaver. Incredible. Fucking sitting there going, looking at the pulse tracker. That can't be. That's inside the room.
You're not reading it right.
It's reading right, man. You're not reading it right.
You're not reading it.
That is a great bit, dude. And everybody is great. Fucking
Well, let's talk
Lance
about the
Henriksen,
casting a little bit.
Bill Paxton.
They ended up firing the guy, and then they, I guess for drugs or whatever, and then they brought in Michael Biehn, who, of course, you're like,
drugs.
why wouldn't you have had Michael Biehn there to
From
start?
the start, dude. He's great as Kyle.
And he
Reese.
has amazing chemistry with her, and that's a big part of it. Is
Hicks.
that they do click.
They do have chemistry.
They do have chemistry. That
For Michael Biehn, who's
doesn't mean we're married or anything. And
Right.
but in your mind, you're like, it kind of does
kinda
for
does.
you too, right?
You're like
and,
on
it,
the
and they
edge,
do
you're
it with very little screen time, very
They're
little time.
only two scenes together.
Yeah, there's not a
Right?
lot of time.
Hey, let's make sure it doesn't come to that, okay?
Yeah, I mean, yet,
he's like, wow.
and yet it works in
Right.
part the way that it worked for him and Linda Hamilton in Terminator.
Yeah, he's got that weird sort of super earnest sexuality.
Right.
where
I
he's
came
like,
through time for you, Sarah.
Came for time for you, Sarah. Right? Every time. You know what I'm saying? Because it was a chance to meet the legend. Like when you're in hiding before the war. You talk about things I haven't done yet in the past tense. It drives me nuts.
Welcome to now.
Right? Let me ask you this. Where did you see aliens? Where did you go?
I can't remember honestly.
Really?
I mean, I'm pretty sure it was a drive-in.
Because I'll tell you where I
Like
went because
Universal
I
or something like
remember
that.
it very
I'm
clearly.
pretty sure it was a drive-in. Because I saw Alien in a drive-in.
People forget about aliens. Also, is that it's shot in 70 millimeter. I saw it on a 70 millimeter screen at the
That's a
Americana
beautiful
Theater,
film,
dude.
man.
It was wide as fuck. And I remember sitting in the audience with my old man and a couple friends of mine from school, and we were just like, this is the most amazing. When that fucking
It is a mind-blowing film at the time, especially.
When
Remember,
it's on a
no
giant
CG
screen.
ever had been invented up to that
No,
point.
none.
And it
you
still holds
believe-
up 30, 40 years after CG.
you believe every second of it. When that fucking face hugger's coming across, you're like, fuck, dude. Christ, kid, look out.
Yeah.
Paul Reiser.
And he uses all
And his
Paul
most
Reiser
Paul
is-
Reiserist,
He's
right?
just great.
It's just the worst.
As the evil
corporate-
space Jew.
Yeah, but Space Jew.
Jews in space. Starring Paul Reiser
Right.
as the evil Jew.
Right.
He's not the
Anyway.
Charlton Heston Jew.
Charlton Heston's Jew power.
He's the Paul Reiser Jew.
Oh, the Jews. Cover your heart in deep. Oh, God.
They were Jewish in that film.
Wait, then they Kali, right?
Different
And
religion.
they have like Hava, Gili Hava, I go to Kali, la la la. No?
Close.
Was
What
it
else you
Topol
got?
in that?
Wrong movie. One of the interesting things about that is just like the other members of his generation, filmmaking wise, it was his version, Jim Cameron's version of Vietnam. In that a primitive society, i.e., the aliens who have no technology at all, are able to destroy the
They
much more
fest-
heavily armed and, let's face it, very 1970s looking era gear.
And they cut the power, man. They're animals. Yeah, lay waste.
As it turns
From
out,
sheer
though,
numbers.
they're a lot more scary than Ewoks.
Excuse me, just a moment.
Now, what in the
I don't
hell
know much.
is the phone complaining because you've drowned it with beer? I could understand.
Might
that.
as well be.
The dialogue, the cast, the special effects, the timing, the fact that it was as good or better than an original, which was an amazing film in its own right. It's all of those things. This new filmmaker, Jim Cameron, who is following up Terminator.
Right,
This,
and this Aliens made Jim Cameron. It was such a huge hit that at that point there was nothing he could.
there is no Jim Cameron without anything. Terminator was looked
was
at,
good. It was great.
but looked at almost like a TV movie that made Arnold.
Right.
This is Jim Cameron.
Without fucking
name me
aliens.
all the stars in Terminator in Aliens, and we're done.
Right.
None of them were
great actors.
stars.
The only star out of that would have been Sigourney Weaver. But even then, the biggest thing she had done up to that point was Ghostbusters. Right. This movie made her a star.
Right. This
in a
put
big
her
way.
over the top.
Yeah, it did put her over the top. She became Sigourney Weaver because she did.
Ghostbusters
was big and it was a fluke. I was like, who's this?
And Alien is big and everything, but this is like there's no doubt remaining that Sigourney Weaver is someone who, even today, you recognize the name and the face of
you know who it
Sigourney
is,
Weaver.
right?
It's not
still
because
active,
of Alien.
very active.
It's not because of Ghostbusters. You don't remember her from Ghostbusters at all.
You remember Aykroyd and
I looked
Murray.
into the trap, right?
Right, you remember fucking Ramis, right? You don't remember her.
You don't remember her.
But you remember from Aliens? Yeah, you remember Ripley.
It is like Empire Strikes Back in that it was directed by a different man because Irving Kershner did direct. A lot of people think, oh, George Lucas was there every day and directed it. No, he wasn't. He was in California.
Yeah.
They were in England.
Norway or some shit,
Irving Kershner directed that movie. Now, George Lucas was there and gave him guidance, but
no.
we're not talking about Howard Hawks as the thing where it was directed by some other guy that really was directed by Howard Hawks. This
was directed by Irving Kershner.
And this was done, but even more so was done by Cameron because Cameron is doing a lot of the design. Cameron invented the alien mound, which is now an archetype that was used.
Now it's in everything.
A giant bug monster that is
Dude,
Alien versus
we didn't
Predator.
even bring up how many video games
took
that concept. It was like Alien Spawn, Alien Syndrome, Alien this, Alien that.
Syndrome.
I mean, there was
Contra,
right. All those games. Oh no, Alien Monster, dude. Alien, it's big. Alien, whoa man, big Alien Monster, and Aliens itself, the video game.
Yeah. So the cultural impact of Aliens
Huge.
was massive at the time, but has kept on reverberating. I mentioned Halo, but
I mean, how many people still refer to a fucking macho badass chick as Vasquez?
sure, game
You
over.
look at Vasquez,
Game
bro.
over, man.
Right? It's like that. Yeah.
What's funny is that Jeanette is nothing like that in real
All that.
What Aliens is really the sort of the height of non-CG technology. It is the culmination kind of his generation dealing with Vietnam, the failure in Vietnam. Because it really is. It comes out either same year. I think maybe Platoon's 85. So I mean, it is a way to deal with that war and everything that war meant to that generation. Because it's interesting to think that the Vietnam War ended in 75. When they finally get around to dealing with it in about the mid 80s, and there's a truckload of Vietnam movies in the mid 80s, and you can argue Aliens is the best of them.
They deal with Ripley's prejudice against androids.
Yeah.
The synthetic. And he goes, I prefer the term artificial person.
So all right. So we'll wrap up the episode, but let me ask you: this is the only controversy about Alien in my mind?
Let's hear
it. Ian Holm was alive until a few years ago. Did the Lord of the Rings films. He did the Hobbit movies. He was clearly available to play the role of the robot in Aliens, and didn't.
No.
Does as great as
Lance
is in that film. It does put a whole different spin on that film I mean, really a huge different spin. And that film made Lance Henriksen, too, talking about
Yeah,
that.
it did.
It got him Millennium. It got him a whole bunch
it got
of
him
other
Pumpkinhead.
Stan
Directed by
Winston.
Stan Winston, right.
From Terminator. Okay. But if Ian Holm is playing the robot in Aliens, it makes you understand the whole, she don't like the cornbread, too. That whole
Right.
scene in the cafeteria becomes
It
much
is
stronger.
Yeah.
And his redemption at the end, I was going to let you die, human, whatever the hell he says.
But, right.
As great as he is, it's sort of like
Okay.
Cumberbatch in the new Wrath of Khan. He's great in the part, but he's still miscast.
Can I give you the counter? Right. I
Well, wait,
feel you.
before
Go
we
ahead.
get to the
Make
counter.
your point, I'll give you the counter.
Before we get to the counter, wouldn't it have been interesting?
It would have been interesting.
Wouldn't it have
okay?
been stronger
been
in
interesting.
some ways?
No. And let me
Not in any way?
Let me give you the counter. Okay.
All right.
Here's the counter. Remember when I mentioned earlier, you got to count on X number of people having seen the original. I think the percentage of people that saw the original.
Wait, it sounds like
would
Ian Holm
not-
sucks, though.
No, but not at all. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you're assuming the impact because you have seen the first, right? I'm going to bet you a percentage of that audience is up to 40% would not have either not have seen Alien or would not have made the connection because remember,
Okay, that's a
this
fine
is not
point,
this is
but-
not today. There's no streaming services. If you didn't catch Alien at the movies, you might have caught it on cable, but not necessarily.
But it doesn't hurt the film to have Ian Holm in that part. And if you had seen it, which millions had, and of course every subsequent generation until the end of time will have also seen,
Yeah.
doesn't it make it a little different, more deep meaning? Like, honestly, her reaction to that robot is a little intense because it's like,
Because
is this
she doesn't
only
trust
the,
robots in general.
Wait a minute. Is that only the second robot you've seen? No, you've seen these robots all around you almost
Right.
your whole life. So her reaction is too strong, given the fact that, in fact, I think that he tried to get Ian Holm, and that for whatever reason, because he was in a play or something, he couldn't get Ian Holm.
Now, wait a
And then
second.
reached out to Lance Henriksen, who was a very good friend of his, who was in Terminator, who actually tried to get investors for him in Terminator. He knew, I mean, him and Lance are buds now.
Right, but Ripley would not necessarily have seen that many robots because remember, they
The
were
high-end
relatively
robots?
new.
And the high-end,
she
super
was
high-end.
asleep for 57 years.
That's
By this time, of course they're common. Right?
Well,
At
I
that
think,
time, she had no idea he was a robot. That was news to her. Whereas 57 years in the future, well, of course, we always go out with a synthetic on board. You see what I'm saying?
sorry, I meant dirty ass robot.
Sorry, filthy robot overlords. He's over there, sir. Hail to our robot overmasters.
Hell!
But anyway, but I think that's
But
where
at
you
the
could.
end, when he comes in
You
to save
think
the
it'd be
day,
better as
but
Ian
if
Holm.
that's Ian Holm, you're like, well, that's a redemption story for robots.
From the
I mean,
original film.
it makes it a more powerful thing.
Okay, and I feel you. And yeah, you could say that, but also, here's the other counter. Jim Cameron made his movie.
No, I get
Not
that, but
Ripley Scott's sequel. You know what I'm saying?
no, but he did make Ripley Scott
Yeah,
because
only
he
with
did not
Ripley.
recast Ripley.
But wait a minute, though. Only with her. I mean, you had to have at least one person.
Did you?
Otherwise,
Why?
well, I guess you didn't
You
have
didn't?
to.
No, you didn't.
But wait a minute. Well, the story wouldn't have made sense because that's her.
Just have it
57
be
years
someone
later,
else. Have it
you
be
had
a
to have an older
have it be a
actress.
daughter. I'm the daughter of Ripley. Boom, solved.
I guess, man.
Which
I
they
don't know.
actually throw in the director's cut anyway.
Yeah, that's
she was
true.
67 years old and she's dead
She
now.
was only 15 years old.
You blew the bloody toes off.
Are we supposed to blow the bloody doors off?
So that would be the only thing. Now, what if they deep faked Ian Holm into that
You
film?
wouldn't have his voice, though, would you?
Well, sure they would. I mean, they could do almost anything now.
Yes.
That-
I
to
mean,
me,
that,
that would
that
be
might be
interesting.
fun. I mean,
But
doesn't that
anyway.
go back to our recast it thing? We're like, hey, imagine this person in that
Well,
part.
that
right?
it's the movie that you can most do that
the
with.
recast with, right? See how it worked. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on 35th anniversary of Aliens and our retrospective of,
of movies and shit.
movies.
So, hey, like, share, subscribe,
share,
do
love
whatever.
each other.
And
Until next time. Mwah!
And the technology, I'm very sorry that happened.
Wrong movie.
Oh, sorry, man.
He's a Flash Gordon. King of the impossible.
It's just a man with a man's courage, you know. There's nothing but a man can never fail. No one but the pure at heart.
Be sure to visit evilgeniusentertainment.com for exclusive content, swag, casting call news, and much, much more.